Pets are the best. If you have the time, money, and space to get one, it's a pretty good guarantee that your life will improve. A pet provides companionship and fuzzy snuggles, listens to your problems, and never complains about politics. Every once in a while, though, a pet owner will get more than they bargained for. House training problems, aggressive streaks, or even seemingly paranormal activity can be part and parcel with a new pet. For one Wisconsin family, it was the latter. When they brought a shelter cat home, his eerie abilities instantly changed their lives. On a Friday afternoon in February 2012, young mom Amy Jung and her son Ethan stopped by the Humane Society in Door County, Wisconsin. It was just going to be a quick visit to see some animals, Amy thought. When they walked in, they were greeted by a 21-pound orange tabby named Pudding. He seemed laid back and friendly, and Amy asked about him to the shelter staff, who told her of his surprising background. Up until a month prior, Pudding had been living with another cat, a younger kitten named Whimsy, when their owner passed away. Now they were both at the shelter together, and they were inseparable. Even before that, Pudding hadn't had an easy life. He'd been in and out of the shelter for years, starting in 2003 and more recently in 2008, when a family gave him up due to allergies. He'd even had a name change. At one point, Pudding was called Starbuck. The owner that had recently passed had decided to give him a cozier moniker after seeing how calm he was. The ever-flexible Pudding didn't complain. Now in the shelter, something about the cat struck a chord with Amy. She couldn't put her finger on it, but he connected so well with her and Ethan. Even the director of the shelter, Carrie Conahan, noticed that Pudding gravitated towards them. On impulse, Amy decided to adopt Pudding. Ethan thought it was a great idea too, but they couldn't leave Pudding's brother Whimsy all alone. So they signed the papers for both cats and loaded their new pals into the car. When they arrived at the Jung household, Pudding and Whimsy settled in right away. Most animals would be nervous or wary of a new environment, but Pudding in particular seemed comfortable and relaxed. After dinner and an evening of getting the cats situated, it was time for bed. At around 9:30 p.m., Amy headed to her room to tuck in for the night, leaving her bedroom door open so Pudding could roam. At first, all seemed normal. But 90 minutes later, Amy, who'd been diagnosed with diabetes in her youth and had been living with it since, began having a diabetic seizure. She was dead asleep. Pudding sprang into action. Sensing Amy's distress, he leapt up onto her chest, but she didn't wake up. So he batted and nipped at her nose until she did. Panicked, Amy called out for Ethan. But the seizure took hold again, and Amy soon lapsed back into unconsciousness. Unbeknownst to her, Ethan hadn't heard the calls or the commotion. Down the hall in his bedroom, he wasn't even awake. Pudding dashed into the boy's room and jumped on his bed, pouncing until he got Ethan's attention. When he woke up to the cat in a frenzy, Ethan knew something was wrong. Pudding stood guard as Ethan rushed in and found his mother still in the midst of the seizure. Fully awake now, he called his dad for help, who talked him through the steps to administer an emergency injection for Amy. When Amy felt well again, she was astounded at the alertness Pudding had shown. For a cat just getting to know his surroundings and who had known his new owner for less than a day, his life-saving behavior was unusual. News spread of Pudding's heroics, and soon, TV stations and Green Bay Post-Gazette reporters were knocking at the door, wanting to interview Amy. "If something or someone hadn't pulled me out of that, I wouldn't be here," she told them. Director Conahan from the shelter was impressed too. Her doctor said she could have gone into a coma and not come out of it if much more time had gone by, she said. "The fact that Pudding did what he did is just amazing to me." Pudding's instincts didn't stop there. After Amy's seizure, she started to bring Pudding everywhere, even to her job at the local florist, where he learned to stand watch and meow whenever he sensed her blood sugar dropping into the danger zone. Amy's doctor recommended she sign putting up to be a therapy cat. Given his chill disposition, he was a shoo-in and passed the registration with flying colors. He even has his own Facebook fan page, Pudding Jung. And what about Whimsy? Just 3 years old at the time, he had a few more years before he could fill the older cat's shoes. But Director Callahan was hopeful. "Maybe he'll pick up some of Pudding's powers," she said. Director Callahan's hope wasn't completely out of the picture. Pet owners all over the world have seen their friends pull life-saving maneuvers that seem to defy science or explanation. Between her stints as a Marine and a mom, Stephanie Herfel was tough as nails. Still, she couldn't help but feel sad to see her son go overseas with the Air Force. But there was one part of his departure he didn't tell her about until the last minute. Stephanie's son didn't want her to feel too lonely while he was away, so he arranged a special gift for her. He entered their California home one morning with a smile spreading ear to ear. He presented her with Sierra, a 9-month-old husky. Stephanie and Sierra became fast friends, and their bond only deepened over the years. Sierra accompanied Stephanie and her husband Jim on a cross-country move to Wisconsin in 2013 without a whimper. In the back of her mind, Stephanie always knew that Sierra was a very special dog. However, she was about to find out exactly how unique Sierra was, and thank goodness for that. One afternoon, Stephanie began experiencing some pain and discomfort in her stomach. She figured she'd just eaten something bad and was suffering through some bad food poisoning. When the sensation continued after several days, she visited her doctor. Stephanie's doctor brushed off her concerns, saying at worst she was dealing with an ovarian cyst. He sent her home with some pain medication, which would, he thought, set her right as rain. Once Stephanie returned home from the doctor, Sierra perked up. That part wasn't unusual. At the same time, though, the husky appeared to be more energized than most days. What was up with Sierra? Sierra joined Stephanie on the couch and immediately thrust her nose into Stephanie's abdomen. Taken aback, she tried to slide away from the dog. Sierra refused to give up, however, and kept sniffing. In all her years with Sierra, Stephanie had never seen the husky act like this before. Maybe she'd spilled something on her clothes and hadn't noticed. Before she had a chance to check, Sierra bolted from the room. Completely baffled, Stephanie followed the dog's trail through the house. She found her huddled into a ball in the back of a closet. Clearly, Sierra was trying to express that something was wrong, but what could it be? By this point, Stephanie trusted her dog more than anyone else on earth. She couldn't help but think back to her abdominal issues. Perhaps through some miracle, Sierra knew something that nobody else did. So, Stephanie scheduled another doctor's visit, and there, Stephanie's worst fears were realized. Tests showed that she had ovarian cancer, which reached a pretty advanced stage. They would have to act fast to save Stephanie's life. In addition to chemotherapy, Stephanie underwent a hysterectomy and a spleen removal surgery in 2014. These procedures put a lot of stress on the Herfel family, but at least Stephanie had her trusty dog at her side during her recovery. To no one's surprise, Stephanie bounced back. The next year passed without much to write home about, which was fine by her. Stephanie was ready to move on to the next chapter of her life, until Sierra began acting strangely once again. And so it was, Stephanie went through another round of treatment. Doctors once again gave her the all clear. A year later, though, yet again, Sierra went wild and sniffed Stephanie's abdomen. For a third time, Sierra correctly diagnosed a tumor inside Stephanie. Treatment, release, recovery, rinse and repeat. Surely she must have thought this would be the last diagnosis. Well, as of 2018, she's been cancer-free since. Leaving that dingy hospital bed behind, Stephanie wanted to return to her life and help others suffering from disease. But she couldn't help but wonder, how did Sierra know? Dr. David Kushner, Stephanie's primary oncologist, had a theory. He explained that certain dog breeds can detect chemical traces given off by tumors with an accuracy of up to 98%. Stephanie and Jim were lucky enough to own a canine with a special gift. They decided not to squander their good fortune. They went public about their amazing story, hoping it could help other people who went undiagnosed. Stephanie also got involved with the Wisconsin Ovarian Cancer Alliance, where she eventually rose to a seat on the board. Sierra is a pretty big local celebrity to everyone in the organization, too. Ultimately, Stephanie believes her story can let people think about their animals and go, "Wow, my animal did this when I got diagnosed," just to give the animals credit that they are pretty smart.